Hello and welcome to the Back to the TARDIS podcast, the podcast where we take a look at every single episode of the 2005 revival of BBC's Doctor Who. I'm Jeff.
I'm Skylar.
Avery Gaver.
And today we are looking at Series 2, Episode 11, Fear Her, by Matthew Graham. Before we get started, just a little behind the scenes on this episode, especially because I think that's gonna... I think in some ways knowing this sort of probably in some ways affected my view of the episode, especially because I was personally like expecting to not like this episode, but this episode originally, this, like, the slot that this episode was supposed to be written, an episode written by Stephen Fry, but it had to get pulled because, like, it wasn't done in time, so they pushed it back to Series 3, and then it didn't ever actually happen, sadly, which is honestly a real disappointment. So as something that was going to be low budget and they could do quickly, they commissioned this script. This script is set in 2012, focusing on the Olympic Games as a backdrop to insidious things happening in a London neighborhood. This episode bears a lot of similarities to Idiot's Lantern. However divided we may be on this episode, I think we'll all agree that this is a better episode than Idiot's Lantern.
Sure.
I would definitely agree.
So yeah, I guess let's just get into it. Oh fuck, I closed my transcript window. I am a professional. Okay.
Jeff be like, yeah, I'm just gonna cut this.
No, I'm leaving this in. Fuck it, we're doing it live. Okay. So yeah, it's sort of like this very suburban locale, where you see people talking and hanging out, and you see a child drawing on a piece of paper, and all of a sudden the children disappear, and it shows that they've somehow the children that disappeared were the ones that she was drawing. Again, well, not again, because this is the first time that I've mentioned it on the podcast, but I was talking about this in the group chat, the group DM, before we started recording. Actually, this episode isn't perfect, and I can definitely see where in some ways it has some major flaws, but I like the concept, and I like what it tries to do, and I like some of the themes that it puts across. It's such like a weird, it's when you think about it, it's actually kind of like a really interesting, like, weird out there concept. It feels like something. It's like the visual equivalent of like some weird shit Big Finish would do with like the audio medium. Like it feels like a very sort of much more experimental episode, and I have to give it props for that. In general, as I'm just gonna say this right now, I went into this episode expecting to not like it because of that thing of like, oh, most people don't like it. Oh, it's just a retread of Idiot's Lantern. Oh, it was supposed to be a cheap episode and was written hastily. But despite all of that, I wrote this on Twitter, and some people thought I was joking. I'm not joking. I actually genuinely like this episode.
Yeah, I can see, and again, I think this is a weird kind of reversal of last week, because I was kind of saying the same thing you are now about Love and Monsters, about the concept and the themes, even though the execution is janky. But
well, I think the execution's still better here, but whatever.
Yeah, no, I get that. It's just, it comes to a point, and I'm not going to skip way ahead, but the way this episode, like, to me it just comes off camp as all hell, which is fine until the episode tries to be like really poignant and kind of dark. Basically, like, really goes for it at the end, and that just left me with a sour taste in my mouth. I started off liking the episode a lot, and I'll get to like the specific parts I like, but then just like it just goes down real hard for me, and it's like, I don't know, it doesn't stick the landing, I guess, is where I kind of have to get off the hype train.
Yeah, I would kind of agree. I think most of the episode is, like, pretty alright. It held my attention okay. And then, the ending is kind of a little cringy, not gonna lie. It's just very much, we gotta get one in for every episode, so it reminds me of the end of Harry Potter and that very sort of, I don't know, they just fucking love it to death or whatever, and then it works out.
Listen, in this case, it actually kind of makes sense, but fuck you, whatever. I fell for that shit. Don't at me. If I get an ad on Twitter in the next 5 minutes, I swear to God. Well, I'm gonna get one now because I mentioned it, but whatever.
True.
So yeah, I do the opening shot of this episode of the, like, after the credits is also really great, where like they land the TARDIS and he realizes that he's like parked it facing the wrong direction, so he walks out like straight into a trash can and is like, oh wait,
And then they turn around.
and he gets
I
back
enjoyed
in
that.
and turns it around.
I enjoyed that. It's a good visual gag.
That's really good. I like the idea that it's a very, partly because it is low budget, it's a very claustrophobic episode. Like virtually all of it takes place on the same street, and everyone's very worried and afraid and distrustful and isn't like going outside. I like that a lot, like that feel that it has.
Yeah, that was enjoyable, and I'll be positive for a second and say two miniature things I liked here. One is that the like side characters, just the like normal people who are like scared and don't know what's going on, that worked really well for me. Just because I don't know, I feel like recently like side characters have been like really hit and miss on Doctor Who, and it just
Yeah.
you know
We peaked 2 weeks ago. We bottomed out last week, and now we're back at like an acceptable midpoint.
Exactly. And just like, again, comparing between eras, I hate to bring up Chibnall this early, but like just comparing the side characters in this to like say Orphan 55,
The fucking Praxius gang of dorks.
Praxius was better, but yeah, it's just, it feels normal,
well,
and
I
it's
mean,
not
they both do the same thing of like they try to cram way too many developed characters into a 50-minute episode.
Yeah, and
where it's like just slow down and focus on like maybe one or two of these.
Yeah, so it felt smooth, and the one point where they're like, everyone's starting to like argue with each other, and you can feel like the fear and paranoia and like anger lashing out, like that's all really solid. And I think a way that this episode kind of gets unfairly maligned is that the setting of like there being like a main street is kind of somewhat familiar to Idiot's Lantern, so I can see in a lot of ways how this would kind of just like fade from the memory, since I know it's very different, but it's like,
well, it's also the structure of like character House who is scarred by abuse, though this episode does it differently and I think a more interesting way that I like. And it's during a major British event, and this time the Doctor gets yeeted and not Rose.
True. In the far-flung future of 2012.
But yeah, I do like that it's just, this also feels kind like it's, I'm getting vibes of like slightly like some of the stuff feels like experimental Big Finish, but some of the stuff also feels a lot like Seven and Ace, like last 2 seasons of the classic show, which, as anyone who's listened to this podcast for more than 2 weeks knows, is absolutely my jam. I fucking love that shit. Because it's similarly using like a very cheap and easy set. So yeah, the Doctor and Rose just kind of like walk around for a bit, and then are like, "Oh, hey, there's weird shit going on," and they start investigating. And that, I don't mind if they're just like, look, we need to get them into the right place. Let's just have them look around for shit. So yeah, it's established that people are just disappearing rapidly, and everyone's really distrustful and paranoid and worried and don't leave the house much. And they all end up converging in the street where the Doctor and Rose are like, okay, we're gonna deal with stuff.
Hiding in your houses, what does that sound like?
Yeah. Oh yeah, there's definitely... I feel like there is some slight comedy here. Not comedy, commentary. Where everyone's like... Well... I guess not. No, it's just kind of usual human paranoia.
What I was wondering is when... Go ahead.
It was more just like... I guess the way I could... It's just like... There's something that's obviously happening, but they keep doing it anyways.
Yeah.
They're all like, yeah, children are disappearing when they go outside, but damn you if I'm not going to let Timmy play outside.
Yeah. Well, I mean, once Timmy actually disappears, they cut that shit out. But yeah, like that's mainly like pre-credits, and like once they get through the credit sequence, everyone's pretty much just inside.
Yeah. I don't know if this was like a coincidence by casting, or like if this was meant to be something else, but like the woman who like starts pointing fingers is like, first it's like she's like, you've been doing suspicious stuff around here, and it's someone from the government, and it's like, or from the council, whatever, and I'm just like, okay, typical like paranoia. But then I realized it's like this white, like middle-aged, possibly Karen light person accusing a person of color of doing something, possibly.
Yeah.
And I'm just, that probably isn't the intent, because it's phrased more as like, oh, you're like the government or the council. But I was just like, ooh, yikes.
She immediately pointed to the black worker, yeah. I was like,
It's like, now we don't have time to unpack all of that, but...
So yeah, I do like I have seen like some Chloe Weber memes occasionally pop up on Twitter and stuff, and people seem to meme things, but like I feel like the actual stuff with Chloe is really good. Whether it's Chloe or the Isolus, like both of them, I think are one of the parts of this episode that works really well.
I think she's trying her best. The actress, is certainly not bad child acting, but and the entire point is that she's supposed to be sort of monotone and not quite earthly and out of it. So I think she actually does a really good job with that. No, yeah, the kind of being out of it, especially even if you were to discount the alien, the fact that she's like gone through some shit, it makes sense. It's just like the way the plot constructs how they came together, like the Isolis and Chloe, and like what this alien is somehow supposed to like be able to make her do. I just like, again, I was kind of like half paying attention to this, and then I got interrupted, and then when I went back and like really watched it, I was just like, this is kind of dumb to me. Like, I get what they're doing, and it's like obviously the themes and construction of it are like, this is a serious thing, but I was just like, I never fully bought into it, and that's probably my problem. If you're able to do that, then it probably works just great. I was just kind of like, this is kind of weird. Which, yeah, it's Doctor Who, knock on wood.
I mean, I like sort of how weird this episode can get, to where it's like the whole thing is like drawing people and making them disappear. Like that's some fucking grade A. Like when I think Doctor Who, that's what I think of. That's what I like that's what I come to this show for, partly. Like, yeah, I don't know. It might just be me. I really like the concept, and not the concept, but like I like the mechanisms and mechanics of this episode. I think it's pretty neat, and it's weird. Admittedly, this might just be because I'm so used to like how like bland Chibnall is, where it's just kind of like, oh, yep, it's normal sort of humanoid-ish aliens again, or that one time it was a virus or whatever, where it's kind of, there isn't like as much weird episodes like this, and I don't know, I just adore how weird this episode gets at points.
Yeah, I mean, it's definitely a huge, I can't deny that, but it's just it's weird, and it goes places, but it doesn't expand on any of the places it goes. That's a bit of a word. Yeah.
I mean, I guess, yeah.
I also just feel like you could do, and again, like, I'm not knocking like the like tackling abuse in a sci-fi story. Obviously, stories are supposed to be about things, but it just seems like this was not a great way to approach that, from just in like how things came off. And I'm not saying, I'm not an expert. I don't know how I would rewrite this at all. It's just a weird juxtaposition for me, and again, I just think it comes down to a thing of like, do you buy into the concept of the alien and the weirdness that is like the drawing squiggly thing monsters, and I just like don't. So it's not a bad episode. I'd put it on in the background while doing something and probably enjoy it. It's not offensive in really like any tangible way. So
again, I think some of this is really just because I have that context of knowing this was a low budget episode that was done at the last minute, and just that could have been a recipe for absolute disaster, and I don't think that's the case. I genuinely think this is underrated, like an underrated episode.
Sure, yeah, it's
but again, mainly because everyone generally seems to just despise it. So
yeah. And again, it's not terrible by any stretch. I may have come off a little bit harsh when I initially like finished with my emotional reaction, but it's like, for the production crunch they were under, it's understandable. That doesn't mean like I excuse it necessarily, but I'm just like, okay, you know what, like, you were up against the wall and this is what you came up with, and you could have done so much worse. So,
Yeah, I'll say this, it's very watchable. Like, at no point in the episode did I feel like I don't want to be watching this. It was good as a filler episode, I think. It does what it needs to do. It doesn't do anything amazing. It's a little bold, not too bold, and it sort of happens.
I think a big reason I like this episode as much as I do is because even though like the Doctor gets yeeted like a bit into the episode, his chemistry with Rose is like among the best. It's not the level
this is
it is
like
in the
probably
two-parter.
This is probably the last good Rose episode.
Yeah, she's competent. The whole like, that's a council truck, that's a council axe, that's a council road, I'm gonna report you, like that. I mean, obviously the main comedic thing isn't her, but like just her type of take charge type of thing, and their chemistry is, believable. It's not as top tier as it is in the Satan Pit two-parter, because that's like god tier Ten and Rose material.
Yeah, that's like one of the few only like genuinely fantastic Ten and Rose things. But yeah,
just like general Ten and Rose adventure, like sure, David Tennant does well. The sky is blue.
Yeah. Also, I do like. You have the thing where like the Rose is like, oh, aren't you a beautiful boy? And the Doctor's like, oh, thanks, and it turns out that she's talking to a cat, and he's like, oh, never mind. Like, there is some really good just like small like bit interactions that are great, top tier. Oh yeah, and then they show off the scribble monster, which I feel like a lot of people make fun of, but again, I have to give it props for how weird it is, and like even if like it's not a like it's a very obvious effect and obviously a very cheap effect, but I'd say it works.
Oh yeah, it's not. I don't think it's dumb because it looks cheap. To me, it doesn't look cheap, but as I said, that's an agree to disagree situation right there. So.
Let's see. Oh yeah. Also, little things like I like how they don't try to like push their way into Chloe's house. Like they ask at the door, and when the mom's like no, they're like okay, and they just leave. And then she calls them back in, but they just leave. And I think that's pretty nice. That's pretty good. I like that. Yeah, I like the interactions between Chloe and her mom, who's not like there's definitely some subtext of like she hasn't necessarily been doing the best job beforehand, but she is actually trying, but she doesn't know what to do with her child who now like low-key terrifies her.
Yeah, the actress of the mom does a good job.
Yeah, she's actually in did you guys watch the His Dark Materials, the first season of that on HBO?
Nope, never heard of it.
Wait, you haven't heard of the book series His Dark Materials?
No. Should I have?
Yeah. Wow, okay. Skylar, you know what I'm talking about, right?
I do, but I haven't seen it. So
okay.
Yes.
She's in that. In the entire time I was watching that show, I was like, wait, where do I recognize her? Oh! That's right. Anyway, feel free to direct all your seriously you don't know His Dark Materials to Avery's Twitter accounts.
I have to say on the topic of the parent, I mentioned in the podcast DMs earlier about the Series 6 episode Night Terrors.
I don't remember that episode. Well, I don't remember it very well, but I don't remember it being very good.
Well, I don't know. this is going to be funny if we get there and I think it's an underrated gem and you two don't like it. But
that's when we have a slap fight in the parking lot.
True. But yeah, I think it does a similar thing with the parent child relationship. Of course, in that episode, the other partner is like still around. But whatever. I just think it tackles that subject while also being like very consistent in the other themes and general like tone, whereas this one doesn't quite fit that consistency well enough for me. But it's good in that episode, and as I said, I think the actress for the mom, and like her reason for acting how she does around Chloe and Chloe's reaction to her, that's pretty good. That hooks me in. So
fair. But and yeah, I like all in the I will say like the acting in this episode is all consistently like really good. Like it's not even like a like yeah, it's decent. No, it's actually really good. And again, I like the idea of how in Idiot's Lantern the abuse is present, and like I mentioned like how it feels like it's just dealt with too easily and just wrapped up a little bit too neatly, whereas in this case like it's already technically over, but the trauma of that still lingers, and that affects this episode greatly, and I like that. Like obviously not as like, oh, like that's good IRL, but like that's good writing, and yeah. I like how that informs the tone of this episode.
Yeah, that's good stuff. I like the idea that like in a sci-fi setting you can examine sort of like more physical manifestations of like psychological trauma or like events and effects that they have on people. So like it makes sense to me why Chloe / Isolus acts the way they do. I don't know, in the episode it kind of comes off more that like this is mostly the aliens idea and that Chloe just happens to like have a past that like goes along with that. I would have preferred that, I don't know, and maybe this is just like being absent for me, like connecting the dots, but I would have liked if she was more dominant in that choice. Like,
yeah, yeah,
like she was using those powers.
Yeah.
So,
but yeah, like if it was like a little bit more hazy where Chloe ends and the Isolus begins. Yeah, I agree.
Yeah, it probably doesn't help that like. So like the Isolus like whisper voice, like I kind of wish there was some effect on it. Like I get there's a creepiness of just having it be like the whisper, but again, I think this is one of the only areas where like the actress's like ability
and the sound, yeah, and
just
the sound
doesn't.
Design is not that great, yeah.
So yeah, and again, I guess, you know, knowing that it's like basically like a rushed together project, I can see why, if it wasn't like strictly necessary, that they probably, you know, didn't want to put all the bells on whistles on everything. They already probably spent a bunch just doing like the squiggle stuff and like stuff like that. But I don't know. It just, you know, hindsight 2020 type of thing, I guess.
Yeah. I do like the concept of the Isolus. That's a really cool alien concept. And I like the fact that the Doctor like very much points out like it's a kid. It's acting like a kid does. It doesn't know any better. It's scared and it's reacting to this unfamiliar situation in this way. I think that's a really good and something that like especially RTD, who I feel like did a lot, and I really like that.
It's a nice contrast to the whole like kind of I don't know if you'd call this eldritch or like um like Cthulhu-esque type of thing with the not
Yeah.
Cthulhu, but with like the Satan pit about like I am beyond you and I have existed before time, which is like very like alien and high tier, and this is like much more relatable. Um,
Yeah.
so yeah, I do appreciate that aspect of it. That it's not just like I want genocide. It's it's lonely
Yeah.
kid.
Yeah. Um Yeah, and the scene where the doctor's trying to explain to her, like, look, you can't do this, I understand. And he's trying to be really nice because he knows that she's the Isolus is a child. That's really nice. Then the drawing of Chloe's father wakes up, and also props to the mixing. I was listening to this episode with headphones, and it is like the drawing of Chloe's dad is like mixed way louder than like most other things in the episode, and it was really effective.
Oh, and it's not just the sound. Like it's not just the volume of it. It's also just like the way they mix that is just like really impactful. Like I was
Yeah.
legit like, damn, like fuck, that's kind of
Yeah.
that's spooky as fuck.
Yeah. Yeah. No, absolutely. Um, they try to find the Isolus pod so the Isolus can leave before the Isolus does something really bad. Um, Also, a really nice line where like the doctor and Rose are arguing because the doctor's like, "Look, it's a kid. Like, give it give it some slack. It's scared. It doesn't really know what to do." Um, and Rose is like, "Easy for you to say you don't have kids." And the doctor's like, "I was a dad once," and she's like, "What?" Which, like, canonically, yeah, if the doctor has a granddaughter, then although that is debatable depending on like if you go
Those
with like
those Time Lord looms, man.
yeah if you go with oh what's it called lung barrow
Yeah.
cannon. um
Who knows what's canon anymore?
Also, the line fear, loneliness, they're the big ones. Some of the most terrible acts committed have been inspired by them. We're not dealing with something that wants to conquer or destroy. And the idea that it's very much it's a reflection on wanting connection, which I really like. Might have missed something. How does she Oh, right, she has a secret stash of pencils. That's right, because they make a big show of like we are confiscating all your pencils, and then she just was hiding more. Yeah, okay, I remember now. And then yeah, right at the worst possible time, the Doctor and the TARDIS disappear, and Rose kind of has to figure this out on her own, and she does a pretty good job. And I like Rose in this episode a lot, as we mentioned, which that's pretty decently good considering that generally she's averaged like a meh.
I don't know. I felt like she was pretty meh in this one too.
I don't know, man. I think she I guess. Um,
I don't know. She doesn't. Maybe this is just damning with faint praise, but like, she doesn't possess any of the negative qualities, such as like, or at least not to the like toxic level of like possessiveness of the Doctor. Just like weird bitchiness with other people. I
yeah.
don't know. I feel like it generally goes up after after Mickey leaves, and
Yeah, for a little bit, and then down
Yeah.
again any other time she shows up after Doomsday. God, season 4 finale pisses me off.
Oh, we'll get there. But yeah, I don't know. As I said, might be damning with faint praise, but it's I like when companions, they like are forced to do something out of their element, but because of their experiences they're able to like pull it off for like the short amount of time in like these particular circumstances that they can. And like, this is a Rose who has been through like the Satan Pit 2-parter, so I'm like, yeah, okay. Again, it doesn't hold a candle to like 12 and Clara, but that's like, I don't feel like that's a fair comparison most days. So
I feel like I'm probably gonna get dunked on for this, but I do like the escalation where just like the entirety of the Olympic Stadium fucking vanishes and everyone's like, oh shit.
that's the dumbest part.
I like it. Fuck you.
Okay, I liked it, but I didn't like how they just like took it in stride and were like, oh yeah, now the torch is a symbol of hope. Ooh.
Okay.
The symbol of hope, of love. I was just like, Jesus, Howard Christ. Like,
Sure.
No, they would be like,
Okay, I'll give you
what the
that,
fuck?
but I like the concept.
Yeah, I think the
Sure.
And
concept
I
is cool.
like how it's applied in the episode itself. It's just the dialogue around it is kind of cringe.
also, it's like,
And I'm just like, bruh.
I know this isn't like super serious, but like looking at the rules of this thing, she's in the beginning, she's drawing children that she and the Isolus like probably know exist, and in this one, I like, is she looking at a TV while doing this? She's just like drawing like random like all dots in the stadium, and somehow
Don't think too much
fuck
about
you.
it.
This is dumb.
Honestly, I thought
It's
that
understandable. It's done with a good heart. I'm not trying to be too cynical here, but like thinking about that, I'm just like, no, that could literally be any stadium. Like, that looks vaguely like, I mean, maybe there aren't a lot of stadiums that look like exactly like that one. Maybe it's all about intent. I don't know. It was just like, whatever. I'm letting it go. It's fine. We're fine here. How are you?
Okay, boomer.
I'm 21. Shut up.
Oh yeah, also they set up the Torchwood thing. They mentioned the Battle of Torchwood, which is pretty nice. I like that. That's clever. Like, you'd think that's just a throwaway until you see the next episode and you're like, oh, that wasn't a throwaway.
I know what that's supposed to refer to, but I can't help but think of Children of Earth when I think that.
That doesn't make no, that doesn't make any sense with Children of Earth. Because that doesn't make any sense. And then Rose figures out that she has to throw the pod into the Olympic torch, which slightly contrived, yes, but fuck you, it works.
It's
And
something she would think of. So yeah,
that's my story, and I'm sticking to it.
it's a symbol of hope and love, Geoff. Of course, you're sticking to it.
Exactly. I lap that shit up. Oh yeah, and then everything works out except there is there's sort of an after thing of them having to deal with the drawing of Chloe's dad, which I will fully admit that is entirely contrived and like, well, the drawing is coming to life now. It's like people turn to drawings turn to people, whatever, sure. Whatever. But the reason why it is there is to give closure for that arc, and honestly, I can't really think of another way that they could do that. And I think that is really important for the episode. So, fuck you, I like it.
Yeah, strangely enough, I don't have a problem with that. I think if you're going to set it up how you do, then and obviously this isn't the type of show where you're going to revisit those characters next week. So yeah,
Yeah.
might
honestly,
as well wrap that up.
Yeah. I don't even have a problem with how they deal with it. I think that makes sense within sort of what the episode's about, in that all of this is created from her internal perceptions and memories and thoughts and dreams and nightmares and all of that. I think it makes sense that the way that they defeat it is singing that song. It's not yes, it doesn't operate on real world logic, but none of this does. That's the point.
Yeah, out of everything I've called dumb, that's not one of them.
Nice.
That makes a certain amount of sense with the weird logic they've set up. So even if I'm not with it, I'm with it. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Um it's revealed that the doctor carries the Olympic torch the rest of the way to the stadium. I will say I'm kind of grumpy that they didn't get David Tennant to do part of it. Matt Smith did do a part of it, however. He did do a part of the torch run
Nice.
for the 2012 London Olympics. I think it was for actually no, it was in Cardiff, I think, because that's where they film. Well, that's where they film, so it makes sense that it would be there and not like London. Well, I don't want to. I'm just gonna verify that real quick, but I think yes. May 26, 2012, carried the Olympic torch in Cardiff. Apparently in 2010, he appeared on stage with Orbital and performed a version of the Doctor Who theme at Glastonbury. I want to see that. And then they very ominously set up that oh yeah, next week's the finale. And then that's the end of the episode. And I apologize to myself editing later when I have to edit out all these very long pauses.
I wrote a lot this episode.
I mean, I've just kind of ingrained pause reflexes so I can let you guys talk, but you guys didn't want to talk this week, so
I didn't have much to say about this one. It was all right. That's all.
That's fair. I guess I'm the only one who is really whoa, holy shit. Anything before we move on to ratings?
I'm good.
No.
Okay. Well, I guess I'll go first then. I'm probably going to be the most positive on this. Again, as I said, I think this episode, partly, again, I might partially be biased because I went into it really expecting to not like it. But I really liked it. I like kind of I like the themes. I like the ideas. I like how unabashedly weird low budget Doctor Who episode it is. I think it's written pretty well considering the circumstances behind it. Yeah, I honestly really like this episode, and I think I'd give it a 7.5 out of 10.
Cool. This episode is okay. I don't know. It just there are ideas that I can see working separately and maybe working together. I just don't I don't enjoy the through line. There's just too much goofiness and just concept that I just don't buy into, or at least how it was executed. Acting's good, the side characters are good. enjoy Rose. I enjoy 10. I enjoy the general like feeling of like feeling enclosed and then like not knowing what's happening. Just kind of like falls apart for me. But it's not offensive. It's a competent job given the space and like circumstances they had to work within. If it was on in the background, I would be fine with that. So 5 out of 10.
I'm just gonna use Skylar's first 4 words. The episode was okay. 6 out of 10.
Fuck you guys. This episode rules. If you also thought this episode rules, feel free to talk to us. We are on Twitter at B2TARDISPod. I am on Twitter at WheatleyDL. I occasionally post things that come through my noggin, memes or game stuff.
I am Skylar. You can follow me on Twitter at skyhigh9_5. Lately, I have been posting a lot of Baby Yoda memes, as well as my usual content of political tweets and mediocre shit posting. It's a good time.
You can follow me at my mostly dead account at BigFatPenis69. The very poppin'.
It's not a joke.
Very popping off at Fat Cunt Ted Cruz. Hot takes today, so spicy.
Yeah. And next week we are going to be talking about Series 2, Episodes 11 and 12, Army of Ghosts and Doomsday. This is the Series 2 finale. And our first companion change in the new series, which is going to be fun. Also, next week, we're going to have a little something new. So, yeah, stay tuned for that. Until then, we'll see you all next week.